I want to go over. Hey, thanks for joining me. This is Jay Claver with the Block Biz back again. Today, I wanted to cover an investment that I have. This is not investment advice, so I'll just go ahead and go get the disclaimer out of the way right here. Anything that's stated in this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This is not financial advice in any way, shape, or form. You should always consult your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. I'm just some guy that's on YouTube. I have no certifications. I cannot consult or give financial advice. So, go ahead and get into XRP. And I've kind of strayed away from this topic specifically in other videos, but I wanted to give a deep dive for people that maybe aren't on Twitter, which is where I do the majority of my speaking. But so here we go. Most of the time when I introduce it to somebody and I talk to them about it, I say, why would it be valuable? Why could it potentially be a good investment? I always ask them a question. I say, do you use a payment app? And inevitably everybody says yes. They use PayPal or Venmo or Cash App or something else. And there's two options on those payment apps. The first option is instant, and there's a fee associated with it. And the second option is you can wait 2 or 3 days and it's free for those funds to settle. And so that illustrates pretty well for most people how slow the banking system is. And then I say, okay, well, what if you could have it for free and instant? And they go, oh, yeah, that would be great if I didn't have to pay a fee, right? Well, that's what XRP does. And I'm not saying so there's a small fee associated with it, but it's significantly less than what these payment providers currently charge people. Visa, MasterCard, they're charging 2 and 3%. Same thing with Venmo or PayPal or Cash App. They're skimming off the top on all these payments. And once the XRP ledger becomes fully adopted, integrated with the financial system, which the banks are pretty much already on board, then that'll go away. That arbitrage will go away. You've also seen Bank of America and Wells Fargo they lowered their overdraft fees to $10. Now, why would they do that? They've been charging $35 and $36 for every overdraft fee for the past, as long as I've had a bank account, my entire life. Just to be transparent, I'm 31 years old. And I've had a bank account since I was 14. So what is that, 17 years that I've been around that they've been charging those overdraft fees? Why just now would they lower them to $10? Because they're going to go away. There will be no double spending when this is implemented. And back to the point of why it would be valuable. It'll be like email is. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, people didn't understand email. They said, why would I use an email when I could, mail a letter? Well, how long does it take a letter to get somewhere? If it's across the US, it could be 4 or 5 days. And that's international wires now, 4 or 5 days. And how much does it cost to send that? Well, you got to buy the stamps, right? Depending on how much it weighs and how far it's going to go, there's a cost associated. With an email, it's instant and free. So why wouldn't you use that? And so we've seen that integration into our society over the last decade. Everybody uses email all day long now. Whether you work a job or not, you're using your email. So it'll be the same way with payments. This new system is the infrastructure or the protocol that allows any payment service or fiduciary to send payments seamlessly and very cheap across a public ledger, see instant settlement, know it got there, verified, all those things. And you're going to own a piece of that protocol is what you're owning when you buy XRP. And XLM does the same thing, but the difference between the two is XLM, there can be more minted, whereas XRP, there's a finite amount and that decreases every day. The fees on the network are paid in XRP, so some is burned with every transaction. Right now, I believe the burn rate is around 5,000 a day. There was originally 100 billion of this asset issued. So it's literally the only thing that's ever existed. Well, there's a few things that exist that are finite and depreciating, but there's literally less of it every single day that it exists, which it's very hard to find. And because of that, the supply being less and less every day, if the volume on the ledger and the demand for the asset increases exponentially and will continue to increase exponentially, just like the adoption of email, right? We just went over that. It wasn't like well, it might be an overnight deal for this when they implement it, but it will continue to be implemented, and more volume will move over the ledger long term as more and more pieces of the financial system are integrated with it. The first piece of this is international payments, because they are so slow. Like I said, 4 or 5 days for a wire transfer. Could be up to 10 days, depending on if it's a random bank in the middle of nowhere that has very little liquidity and just isn't connected very well to other branches or other banks. So this allows everybody to operate on the same system. It's public, it's transparent, and it's easy to use, and it's free. Well, not quite free, but pretty damn close to free. So when I explain that to high net worth individuals in that manner, most of the time they go, oh, okay, supply demand, that makes sense. And if it's adopted as a public good, then we're all going to be using it. So that's going to drive demand. And there's a fixed supply that drops every day. Okay, yeah, that makes sense that it would go up in value. And the value would be determined by how much volume is moving over the ledger on a daily basis and the amount of XRP that's being used to facilitate that volume. So let's just take the Swift example. Swift is the primary payment network. It's a messaging system. Swift GPI is what they're migrating to be compliant with ISO 20022, which is a mandate that goes fully live in March next year. Is when I think they pushed that deadline to. And Swift does around $5 trillion a day in settlements. It's a messaging layer. And you basically say to the other bank, hey, I want to send this amount of money to this account at your bank. They verify it, make sure the information's okay. And then they come back to you and they say, okay, we'll run this up with our other transactions, and you send the payment one time. And you also need to pre-fund accounts with the current system. So we've got locked up capital at all these banks that they have to hold to be able to settle large amounts of money. With the XRP ledger, it's no longer a necessity. You source liquidity from the asset. There's a DEX that's built into the protocol, and you can receive whatever you want or transfer into whatever you want on the other side of the transaction. So I could send you dollars, and I don't have to have pesos at your bank. And this removes the counterparty risk also, right? So imagine you were holding Turkish lira at a Turkey bank in order to be able to settle into Turkey, right? You're sending dollars, they get the dollars and they swap it to your Turkish lira, and then they swap it with their currency. People don't want to do that, especially with how volatile and inflationary some of these currencies are. So those are the corridors that this is really taken off in, or in spaces that people don't want to hold the collateral that's necessary for the other side of the transaction. Argentinian peso is another one of these. And so this is going to be the first step, and they'll implement it there. And then over time, it'll migrate to other pieces of the financial system. So another example that I give people is the stock market. Everybody's pretty well aware of GME and AMC, or GameStop and AMC, and the debacle that happened in, was it late 2020 or early 2021? It escapes me, but Robinhood and all the other brokers froze trading on those stocks because the volume was so high, and they actually oversold the amount of stock that they even had on hand, because there's no accounting system that's across all of the brokers and the clearinghouses. So there's actually 6 clearinghouses that sell these stocks to the brokers that then sell to retail, right? And there's a 2-day settlement time between the broker and the clearinghouse. And so if there gets to be too much volume on one particular stock, the clearinghouse has to front all of that money basically and wait for it to settle 2 days later. And there's no accounting mechanism to figure out, okay, did we oversell it? Did we undersell it? They just have to wait till it runs up and go, oh, we issued too much stock. We can't do that. You're going to have to renege on some of those that you passed out, and we got to figure out who we're going to take it from. And that's why so many people were upset when Robinhood took their stock away after they froze trading on the asset. It's an archaic system that we still have to deal with. And you would think, I mean, you use the app and it looks real time on the surface level, but it is not. There's a lot of moving pieces on the back end of that still has to take place. And so if you had a ledger that you could tokenize stocks on, and it accounted for all those things, and it allowed you to settle in and out of them instantly with the clearinghouses, you don't need the brokers. So not good for them. But at the same time, you don't have that they were not going to need to freeze trading on a stock. The other piece of that is the fractionalization of stocks. So right now we have stock splits. People will, Amazon, Apple, all the huge tech stocks have split their stock multiple times so that they can make it affordable for the retail investor to continue to buy, right? But if you tokenize the stock, you could sell 1,000th or a 10,000th of a stock. The average person could buy as little or as much as they wanted. They don't need, when Amazon ran up to $4,000, they didn't need $4,000 to buy one stock. They would only need $4 if it was 1,000th of an Amazon stock, and then they could participate. So how much more capital do you think will move into equity markets if they tokenize stocks? And there's an accounting mechanism that allows it to trade 24/7, 365 with no downtime. So it's a huge expansion in your ability to raise capital from retail investors. Anyway, so how much settlement is there in the stock market on a daily basis? We'll get to the value of this deal. We'll go back to Swift. Sorry, I got on a tangent there. So imagine you got $5 trillion a day in settlement, and we'll say there's 100 billion XRP total, 50 billion is locked up in escrow. And then you've got retail that holds around 2 billion, and then institutions and other people, large financial institutions, hold the majority of it. So let's say you could source liquidity from 25 billion for $5 trillion a day in settlement. What's that come out to? I'll let you do the math on it. Be around $200 in order to facilitate those payments with that demand, with that supply, and that's on the contingency that the same XRP is only used once per day. Okay, so let's say it got used 10 times a day. That's still $20 per XRP, right? And people are going to hold on to this stuff because it'll be collateral and it'll be a tier 1 asset in the banking system. So it's unlikely that people are going to use it more than they have to facilitate payments. And it's likely that the supply being used to facilitate those payments will probably be lower than the number I just mentioned. So that would drive price higher. Very good. So what does that mean? Where could it go to? Well, with Swift on board, with DTCC on board, with commodities on board, with the FX market on board, with derivatives on board, with assets in the real world being tokenized and transferred across the ledger. Ripple created this software that they've implemented with the banks using this public ledger. They created software on top of a public ledger. There's a delineation between Ripple, the company, and the XRP token. They're separate. This is not a security of Ripple. Ripple has its own private equity that it offers. XRP is just the settlement mechanism in the protocol, like I talked about before. What could the price of this asset go to if it had to transact all of the money all over the world? And then here's the other piece of that. You may have the positive side of all the money, and then you have the negative side of all the money. So you've got debits, and credits that it has to provide liquidity for, because somebody's debt is also somebody's asset, right? So when the banks create money, I'll just tell you how it goes. They create an offset. It comes out of nowhere. They create it out of nothing. And I think that'll still continue as long as they have the collateral to do it. They issue a debit to your account and a credit to theirs, and it's an asset on their books. And they will collateralize it, wrap it up with a bunch of other ones, and sell it off to somebody else as an asset. So there's the money that they gave you and their debt, which is also collateral that they could sell for value. So when people say all the money, I think some people don't really grasp that whatever you think is all the money, you should just go ahead and double that, because that's really the value that needs to be transacted. So anyway, what's the value long term of that thing? The sky's the limit, to be honest with you. The economy will continue to grow. We will have new economies inside metaverses and potentially other planets if Elon Musk gets his way. So your guess is as good as mine, but it seems to me that it will be a very high value long term if it's accepted as the public good and the ledger that all the money transacts over, and the XRP token has to provide liquidity to all those transactions. So this is 2022. We're in December of 2022, and this is when Brad Garlinghouse has stated that Libra wouldn't have launched by, and we've had the FTX debacle and that whole piece collapse. And now they're trying to usher in regulations for stablecoins and exchanges, which PolySign just came out today through Link2 and stated that they would be the exchange of exchanges. They would provide liquidity to the markets. And I wonder how they're going to do that and what they're going to use to do that. David Schwartz, being the CTO of Ripple, is on their board. Arthur Brito is also from Ripple on their board. He's he left Ripple to be the CEO of PolySign. And then they've also got a gentleman from BNY Mellon who's the largest asset custodian on the planet. Like 1/3 or 1/4 of the world's assets are custodied with BNY Mellon. They're going to be a behemoth. Every time Link2 is offered their stock through their platform, it's sold out in less than 5 minutes. So people know what those, and Ripple's the same way. When they offer Ripple equity, gone off there. People understand what these two companies are here to do, and the technology that they're using requires XRP. So again, not investment advice. I just wanted to kind of go over the possibilities of what exists if the XRP ledger or that protocol is adopted as the base layer that moves money across the entire economy in all situations, which I think is likely a scenario. We need a multipolar world, and the dollar hegemony with SWIFT, I believe, has come to an end when we sanctioned Russia early this year after they invaded Ukraine. That caused a lot of distrust between the other G20 nations and the US. And we've also seen the alliance of BRICS and BRICS Plus that's now become a thing. Saudi Arabia, potentially the last piece of that. We'll see if they join or not. But with all of that culminating, it's very apparent to me that it's likely that will be the protocol that's accepted, and we will go to a multipolar world where currencies are asset-backed, or wholesale CBDCs are asset-backed on the XRP ledger, and it's trustless. You can transact with another nation. They will accept your XRP through the protocol, and they can swap it for whatever they want to receive on the other side of that transaction. And anybody that owns it would probably be able to leverage it in some way. We'll see what exists on the other side of that. But I appreciate you guys for joining me, and I hope that gave you some insight into why I'm invested into XRP. And if you haven't ever looked at that asset, maybe you're able to look at it for the first time, or maybe if you have seen it before, maybe you see it in a little bit different light now. We'll see y'all on the next one.